From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
The sounds of the season as another harvest comes to an end. We head out into the fields to see for ourselves what farmers are facing.
It's been a tough year here.
We hit the road to check on yields
We've been very pleased with our corn yields this year.
amid a challenging year.
And all the beans are very short.
See what we found on our annual I-80 Harvest Tour right now on AgDay. Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. As the harvest season rolls to an end, we want to take a look back at what has been a busy last couple of months. With farmers battling drought and dryness, even wildfires and high winds in an effort to bring in the harvest. USDA saying that corn harvest is now 96% complete. That's 6% ahead of average. Cotton still a bit to go at 79%. Winter wheat planting, it's complete, while emergence is now at 87%, 1% ahead of average, and conditions remain about the same from last week, with 32% rated good to excellent. And we've been checking on how harvest is going as well, sending AgDay's Michelle Rook out to talk with farmers along the I-80 corridor. And we begin in Iowa, where last month USDA projected a 200 bushel per acre corn yield for Iowa, which was off 4 bushels from last year, while soybean yields were pegged at 58 bushels per acre, down 5 bushels from 2021. However, as we found, yield reports were all over the place.
Yield results have been highly variable in Iowa this harvest season, especially from west to east. In the west, farmers like Marty Ellis face below normal moisture for the second season.
It's been a tough year here. We've missed a lot of the rain.
Ellis says while corn yields in his area are higher than expected, they'll still be down from 2021, especially on the lighter ground.
I think we're probably going to maybe hit this 180 in here. I was thinking we're going to be 150 or less, but I think it's a little better than I thought.
Even his best ground, though, will be off his farm APH.
I really think that's going to go 200 fairly easy, it looks like. It's pretty stable, pretty solid, low ground, no big hills, and it really looks good. So I'm pretty sure that'll go over 200. That's my best guess right now.
And with only a few showers in August for soybeans, yields will be down from the 70 bushels per acre he harvested in 2021.
In 50 to 60, maybe a few going a little bit above 60, but that's going to catch most of us. That's just been a lack of timing for moisture.
Farther east in north central Iowa, Grant Woodley says he picked up some of the key rains in August that Ellis missed for his soybeans.
We were fortunate they were able to catch a couple 2-inch rains, two 2-inch rains in the second and fourth week of August. It really saved the crop.
As a result, Woodley says his bean yields were a pleasant surprise.
I would say probably not record-breaking, but definitely trend line bean yields.
Woodley was just getting started on corn, but yield reports in his area were very strong.
Neighbors have been surprised again. I'd say probably 200 plus bushels, some as high as 250, 260, so pretty fortunate, I think.
And that was even with some tar spot pressure plus heat stress during pollination that shaved off the top end corn yield.
We saw tip back a little bit, I think not as much maybe as last year, but definitely we did see some ears not fill all the way for sure.
Both Woodley and Ellis say the quality of the crop has been excellent though, especially the corn.
I think we'll be around that normal 58, 9. I'm guessing they'll be somewhere in there, maybe a pinch lighter.
With the open weather, the crop is dried down fast, resulting in very little drying. In fact, Woodley is more concerned about corn dropping below 15% moisture and hurting the quality, and longer term about the lack of recharge for next season.
We're going to need some serious moisture to get subsoil moisture recharged and to be able to start off next year on a good foot.
Yields in the Fields on AgDay is brought to you by Micro Essentials from Mosaic, the science of more. Discover our proven products. Text yields to 31313.
A big factor impacting those yields in the field, this year's drought, and just about 60% of the country experiencing moderate to exceptional drought. Clay Pope, the Southern Plains Perspective, talked with one rancher in Palo Pinto County, west of the Dallas-Fort Worth area.
You know, there's been tons of ranchers having to sell out, shortage of water, no grass. And then we've been affected by the wildfires, which has affected a lot in our area. We had about a 12,000 acre fire a couple months ago, and then there's another one going. The report today at the meeting was we'd had 3 inches, I believe, this year, and that's just way, way behind. Now, we did have some good rain a couple months ago that helped green stuff up, but it's all dead, and, you know, the tanks are drying up now.
And drought was a theme of this year's AgDay Harvest Tour. We'll check out South Dakota, Illinois, and Indiana coming up, and later, Harvest goes beyond the numbers and the weather. It has its own unique sounds. We share some of them coming up. The dry weather in South Dakota pushed Harvest to near record pace. However, as Michelle Rook reports, it's because there are fewer bushels to handle in areas hit by drought.
The theme this harvest season here in South Dakota is variability, with great differences in yield and moisture from north to south.
In the Northeast, many farmers had excess moisture this spring and took prevent plant on some acres. The exception was Chad Schooley.
We had a good start this spring. We were lucky right here. We got in on time.
Rains through July benefited his corn, and even with the heat, yields are only down slightly from farm averages.
We're probably going to be in that 175, 180. We'd like to see closer to 200, so about 10% off.
And the quality of the corn is good, with test weights in the upper 50s. However, he ran out of moisture in August, which hurt his early beans.
The better beans are 50 to 60, but our early beans were, 20, 30, a lot of 40s. So I'm hoping to average in the 40s.
A little farther south, David Iverson's soybeans are short, but yields in the 40s and 50s will exceed 2021.
We had more rain this year on most of our fields, so I think our yields are going to be better than last year.
And his corn crop is right on his APH.
Our goal for corn is to have 200 bushel in our area, and I think we'll be in that neighborhood.
Jesse King farms near Iverson and says surprisingly he's getting average to above average soybean yields.
On the lighter ground, high 40s. This field here was mid 50s. We had a 60.
But in the Southeast, farmers have been hit by drought conditions that are similar to 2012.
We were 11 and a half inches behind normal for the growing season. That wasn't just for the whole year, but that's pretty significant because that would be less than half.
And for Tim Ostrom, his dryland corn yields will be half of normal.
It's really a tough year, just no rain hardly at all. So this field right here that we're in is going 90.
His bean yields were also disappointing, running on either side of 30 bushels per acre.
And all the beans are very short. I mean, the yields are not going to be very good in our part of the state.
Overall in South Dakota, it doesn't look like the North will make up for the South.
I don't see that. I think if we're average or some places a little above average, but if the South is pretty much below average, I think overall we'll be down some.
Fortunately, though, basis levels and cash grain prices have stayed strong to offset losses.
Prices right now, are some of the highest prices that I've sold in my farming career so far.
There's $6.50 corn going to town right now at 180 bushel. That's still good money.
I'm Michelle Rook reporting for AgDay.
During the Pro Farmer Crop Tour, scouts expressed optimism about what they had seen in Illinois. But did things change come harvest time? We continue our yield check next. Big things were expected out of Illinois after the Pro Farmer Crop Tour, with Pro Farmer predicting 198 bushels to the acre, tying with Iowa for the top spot, and also #1 for soybeans at 64 bushels to the acre. Rejoining Michelle Rook as part of our AgDay Tour, she reports the harvest has also gone quickly for farmers in Illinois this fall, thanks to better weather.
The harvest season is quickly wrapping up here in Illinois, and it's produced some mixed and surprising yield results for farmers.
In central Illinois, planting was late for Alex Head, and the corn was hit by hot, dry conditions during pollination, so the harvest was a pleasant surprise.
We did see some tip back, so yeah, I mean, it took probably a little bit off of it, but I mean, overall, the corn, can't complain with the yields. So it's been good so far what we've done, and say everybody I've talked to has been happy with their corn yield.
In northern Illinois, Wade McLaughlin had similar results, with timely rains and very little disease pressure.
We've been very pleased with our corn yields this year. They're not record-setting, but well above APH. I would say anywhere from 10 to 20 bushel above APH.
And his test weights also added to the yield.
I would say the majority has fallen between 59 and 61, so real pleased with our test weights.
Farther south, farmer and market analyst Matt Bennett says those trends were true on his farm, so he thinks the statewide corn yields could set a new record.
I think Illinois will be better than last year. Is it going to break an all-time record? The final yield, I believe, in 18 was 209. It was printed at 210 at one point that growing season, marketing year, you name it. But do we get to 210 or above? I think it's a very possible situation.
Soybeans were the opposite, with yields somewhat disappointing compared to expectations due to too much late-season rain and diseases like SDS.
A lot of beans in our part of the world were running from the mid-60s to mid-80s. You know, there were some mid-80s, and we had some of them.
So they're good, above APH and above, but not like exceptional like we thought they might have been.
So Bennett, who thought soybean yields in Illinois had a chance of breaking the record, now thinks they'll miss that mark. In Illinois, I'm Michelle Rook for AgDay.
Up next, we head to Indiana, where the harvest rolled at a record pace as our AgDay Harvest Tour continues. Continuing our AgDay Harvest Tour along the Corn Belt, we headed to Indiana. AgDay's Michelle Rook reporting again on how harvest was running ahead of schedule in the Hoosier State.
The harvest continues to roll at record pace here in Indiana, and it looks like statewide yield averages will be down for both corn and soybeans.
It's a function of drought in June and July that resulted in a 10-inch moisture deficit on Chuck Shelby's farm, and heat, which caused significant tip back on the corn.
So that, I think, impacted the abortion on the end of the kernels. So it's kind of a factor this year that is probably where the biggest yield loss is.
He says late season tar spot also trimmed some bushels, and so corn yields are above 200 bushels for Shelby and farmers across much of Indiana, but still below average.
In our part of Indiana, the corn yields are 20-25 bushel less than what we normally expect. We're still a lot of farmers in Indiana are going to probably have crop insurance claims in Indiana because they have high APHs from some previously really good years.
Southern Indiana farmer Kevin Kalb says his farm also started out dry, but then the weather did a 180. Kalb runs strictly a corn-on-corn rotation and says his corn yields will be closer to his APH for 2022.
I think we're going to be right there at farm average APH. You know, we were kind of concerned because the early stuff that we shelled was normally our best ground, our highest yielding, and it was 30 to 40 bushel off. But then we started getting into more marginal ground, and then they were 30 to 40 bushel better than what normally.
They also sprayed with fungicide, which prevented the southern rust and tar spot prevalent around his area. And there was some tip back, but it was offset by heavier test weights.
We did abort probably 4 to 5 kernels on each ear, but with a great grain fill with the cool weather that we had in July and August, you know, the corn evidently made up for it.
Southern Indiana was also hit by early frost, so Kalb had wet corn in the upper 20s he had to dry. Soybean yields on Shelby's farm averaged about 6 bushels per acre less this year, and he says much of the state will see farm averages in the 50s and 60s compared to the 70s last year.
I think the yield, you know, is certainly less than last year. There were a few good pockets of Indiana, northwest Indiana, that yields are probably as good or better. But for the majority of the state, really the impact was felt by that dry weather early on. Another factor too, some of the double crop beans were impacted by frost.
So he thinks USDA may need to lower both corn and soybean yields for Indiana in the November WASDE.
Again, very few farmers in Indiana would say their crop is as good as last year. And remember again, in the previous USDA reports, the USDA lowered last year's yield and lowered acreage. So I think overall the Indiana yield still has room to come down.
In Indiana, I'm Michelle Work reporting for AgDay.
All right, thanks, Michelle. Now, we've talked about harvest, but what about listening to it? Some of our favorite sounds of the season, next. We've talked a lot in this newscast about the harvest. Now we'd like to take time to listen to it. Our friends over at the Arkansas Farm Bureau summing up the season with the sounds of the combines, tractors, and trucks as they bring another farm year to a close. And our thanks to the Arkansas Farm Bureau for sharing those sights and sounds. And that's going to wrap us up for this edition of Ag Day. From all of us here, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Thanks for watching. Have a great week out in farmland.